Hello, and welcome to the first episode of Interviewing the Dead. I'm your god, and this is the afterlife. Today, we'll be heading straight into District 05, home to some of the best people humanity's ever seen. Our guest? Well, it's none other than Iris Fritillary. I can't promise she'll be one of the best people ever lived. In fact, she's a huge loser, but we'll interview her anyways. So let's see what keeps her up at night, huh?
Hello, Iris. I would ask how you are, but I've been instructed that pleasantries are a waste of time, so let's just get right into it. For our first question, how do you respond to rejection?
Well, I'll tell you a story. When I was 17 years old, I got accepted into Stanford University, so I left home, made my way to California, and never looked back. I applied for their biology and psychology tracks. My real interest was neuroscience, but unfortunately they didn't offer it at the time. So, if you can help it, don't attend college in the 60s. Long story short, I got rejected. And you can call that first world problems or nothing to even worry about because who even cares? It's Stanford University. I mean, it was Stanford.
Sounds like Stanford gave you quite the ego.
Not an ego. I've gotten that comment once or twice, but I chalk it up to projection. I think I'm too, I understand the human experience. That understanding doesn't give you an ego.
I see.
Anyways, to get back to the point at hand, since I didn't get into the program I wanted, I settled for, sociology. I'm dead, so I don't know if this is actually true, but I have this friend of mine that got here around a year ago. He told me that nowadays kids get communication majors if they have no work ethic. Back in my day, sociology majors were just that. I can't believe it's what I settled for. Anyways, here's what I did. I made friends with a guy named Andrew. He was on the biology track, and he let me know what times the classes were. So, I just snuck in. Don't even think Andrew knew. Never told him. I did the same thing for the psychology classes, even though they were a bit less useful. I also read a lot of books. A lot. But overall, I guess my point is to reject the rejection. Don't let others have that much control over you.
Does the rejection hurt at all?
Well, all rejection hurts, but I don't care about that feeling. I'll tell you a story.
You really love stories to prove points, don't you?
Nice observation. I do. I had a friend once. He was a pilot and flying through some pretty bad weather. This led to poor visibility, so his body thought he was flying at a level direction, but the plane was actually tilted to the left. Because of this plane's rotation, he started to lose altitude. Not knowing why, he raised the nose of the plane. In short, that led to the plane spiraling, and then he spiraled all the way into the water. He died.
Gruesome.
Indeed, but pay attention to why he died. It was his body. His body lied to him. It's the same thing with rejection. Those feelings are there because you're being, excluded. Do you know why we hate exclusion? It's actually purely evolutionary. If we were rejected from social groups in the Stone Ages, we'd probably be mauled by a bear. Our brains think it's way worse than it is. That's why I don't like to wallow in feelings of rejection. It's hard, of course it is. As a neuroscientist, I'm almost required to hold empathy for difficult times. So I do have empathy, but if you're rejected, it's likely for a good reason. Identify what that is and fix it. And if it's not for a good reason, silent revenge. Try it out.
So, you're a neuroscientist? Even in the afterlife?
Well, yeah. I know it's the afterlife, but I got my PhD. I wrote books, I published papers. Hell, I'm sure that the person who cured cancer will still call himself a scientist. Even if he's a million years into the afterlife, he will.
Let's move back to rejection. How do you reject the rejection, as you say?
Well, you have to be subtle about it. Let's take the Board of Admissions that rejected me, for example. I didn't break into their office and demand a second chance, no. I worked harder. It's always served well for me because a year later, I applied again, and guess what? I got in.
So it all worked out?
Yes, it did.
Do you ever think about how your life could have gone if you let the rejection consume you?
Sometimes. I used to, back in college. When I was on my 12th cup of coffee, I would think, is it really worth it? I'm getting rejected anyways, why am I even trying? But whenever that thought would enter my head, I would think about why I was working so hard, and the thought of not trying was just so impossible to entertain.
And why were you working so hard?
Well, it's in me, I suppose.
Now, in the afterlife, you seem quite content.
Well, I wouldn't call myself content.
You seem quite content. Have you had any chances to reject the rejection in District 05?
Not particularly, no.
I see. So, what would happen if a situation arose, and you couldn't reject the rejection? What would you do?
That wouldn't happen.
What if it did?
Guess I'd be dead.
Well, looks like our time is up. I'll see you soon on our next episode of Interviewing the Dead. Make sure to subscribe and hit that like button for another episode. I know you want to.